The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, like the expensive perfume she'd insisted on wearing to every family gathering, even when it made my eyes water. It's just that, well, people aren't exactly thrilled about the guest list, dear. Her voice, that saccharine, overly polite lilt that always signaled a coming storm, dripped with faux concern. I hadn't even had a chance to ask about the specific shade of pale blue she'd chosen for the nursery walls, a decision I'd painstakingly researched and presented to her a week prior, only to have it dismissed with a wave of her hand. The baby shower. My baby shower. My first child. The one I'd spent months planning, meticulously crafting invitations, envisioning a day filled with genuine joy, not this carefully orchestrated social dissection. My life before this moment had been a symphony of carefully managed expectations, a delicate dance around her, my mother-in-law, Eleanor. She was a woman sculpted from privilege and a deep-seated belief in her own infallible judgment. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect family. My husband, Mark, adored her, and she, in turn, doted on him, a dynamic that often left me feeling like a well-meaning, if slightly inconvenient, accessory. Mark worked long hours, a necessity in his competitive field, which meant Eleanor filled the void, her influence seeping into every aspect of our shared lives. She'd suggested the renovations on our house, advised Mark on his career moves, and, of course, offered her unsolicited opinions on my wardrobe, my cooking, and my general suitability as a wife. I'd learned early on to nod, to smile, to strategically deflect. It was the path of least resistance, the quiet way to maintain a fragile peace. I remember the time Mark was up for a promotion, a significant one that would have meant a substantial pay raise and a much-needed reprieve from his grueling schedule. Eleanor had called me, her voice laced with that familiar condescending tone. "Darling," she'd cooed, "I've been thinking about Mark's interview. You know, he really needs to project an image of absolute command. Perhaps a more tailored suit? And for heaven's sake, encourage him to speak less about teamwork and more about strategic leadership. It's so much more impressive." She'd then proceeded to dictate a list of powerful buzzwords, as if Mark, a brilliant engineer, needed lessons in corporate jargon from a woman whose professional experience amounted to managing a charity bake sale. I'd relayed her suggestions to Mark, downplaying their origin, and he'd tried to incorporate them, looking increasingly uncomfortable with each forced pronouncement. The promotion didn't happen, and while he never blamed me, I saw the flicker of disappointment, a quiet acknowledgement of what could have been. Eleanor, of course, never once admitted her suggestions might have been detrimental. Instead, she'd lamented, "Oh, darling, perhaps the timing wasn't quite right. These things happen." Another instance, etched in my memory with the sharpness of a broken shard of glass, was when my father passed away. It was a raw, devastating time. Mark was a pillar of support, but Eleanor's presence was, as always, a complex mix of unsolicited advice and thinly veiled self-congratulation. During the wake, as I stood numbly by the guest book, fighting back tears, she'd approached, a perfectly manicured hand resting on my arm. "You're holding up so well, dear," she'd whispered, her voice a low rumble. "It reminds me of when my own mother passed. I was so strong, even then. I insisted on handling all the arrangements myself, you see. It's important to be in control during such difficult times." She'd then proceeded to describe, in meticulous detail, the floral arrangements she'd chosen, the specific readings she'd selected, and the caterer she'd hired for the reception. It was as if my grief was merely a backdrop for her own narrative of competence and resilience. The irony was lost on her, or perhaps it was simply irrelevant. My pain was a fleeting inconvenience, her performance was eternal. The baby shower was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at a quaint little tea room I'd booked months in advance. I'd sent out the invitations myself, a beautiful watercolor design featuring delicate baby booties. Mark's family was on the guest list, of course, including Eleanor, and my own mother and a few close friends. It was meant to be a celebration, a joyous occasion to mark the imminent arrival of our little one. I'd spent weeks preparing, dreaming of the laughter, the shared excitement. Then came the phone call, just a week before the event. Eleanor's voice, smooth as chilled silk, had delivered the blow. "Darling," she'd said, her tone carefully modulated to convey both concern and a hint of disapproval, "I've been speaking with some of the other mothers and grandmothers in the family. It's become apparent that there's a certain level of discomfort regarding the guest list. Perhaps it would be best if we kept this a more intimate family affair. Just us, really. We can have a lovely lunch, just the immediate family." The unspoken message was clear. My friends, the people who had supported me, who were genuinely excited about my pregnancy, were not deemed worthy of her approval. They were extraneous, perhaps even a reflection of my own perceived lack of sophistication. The air in my lungs seemed to seize. I pictured her sitting in her immaculate living room, surrounded by her equally immaculately dressed friends, dissecting my life, my choices, my friendships, with the clinical detachment of a surgeon. The word uninvited wasn't spoken, but its weight settled in my chest, heavy and suffocating. My carefully constructed peace shattered. The quiet endurance snapped. The tea room, with its delicate floral wallpaper and the faint scent of Earl Grey, felt alien to me that day. I'd received Eleanor's call, the subtle manipulation carefully masked as a benevolent suggestion to streamline the event. I'd agreed, my voice a brittle whisper, the tears I'd held back for so long finally starting to fall in the privacy of my own bathroom. Mark was away on a business trip, a cruel twist of fate, leaving me to face this latest familial skirmish alone. I sat at the small, round table I'd reserved, the single place setting a stark reminder of my isolation. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from friends, asking if they should bring gifts, expressing their excitement. I couldn't bring myself to respond. The hurt was a physical ache, a hollow space where anticipation had once resided. Eleanor's pronouncement had been precise, surgical. She had, in her own way, excised me from my own celebration. She had chosen to orchestrate my exclusion, to wield her social capital like a weapon, leaving me wounded and adrift. I envisioned her, smug and satisfied, already mentally composing the apologetic texts to those she'd subtly alienated, framing it as my preference for a smaller gathering. The entitlement radiating from her was palpable, a silent testament to her absolute certainty that her desires superseded everyone else's. She believed she was protecting me, or perhaps, more accurately, protecting her image of the perfect family. The silence in the tea room was deafening. The waiter, a young man with kind eyes, approached my table with a gentle smile. "Are you waiting for someone, madam?" he asked softly. I looked at him, then at the empty chair opposite me, and a quiet resolve began to form in the pit of my stomach, a cold, hard knot of determination. Eleanor had wanted an intimate family affair. She had effectively uninvited my chosen community. Very well. She would get her intimate family affair. And I would have my celebration. The next few days were a blur of quiet activity. I didn't scream, I didn't cry to Mark, he would have immediately confronted his mother, leading to a week of dramatic phone calls and emotional blackmail, and I certainly didn't confront Eleanor. Instead, I made a series of calls, my voice calm, my requests specific. I contacted my closest friends, the ones Eleanor had deemed unworthy. I explained, briefly and factually, what had happened. There was shock, of course, and anger on their behalf, but mostly, there was understanding and unwavering support. They knew Eleanor. They'd witnessed her subtle digs, her condescending pronouncements. They knew this wasn't about streamlining, it was about control. I booked a different venue. Not a tea room, but a bright, airy space in a local community garden center, complete with a small outdoor patio. I sent out new invitations, simple and elegant, with a clear RSVP date. I didn't mention Eleanor, or Mark's family, or the previous arrangement. It was a new event, a fresh start. I focused on what I wanted, a genuine celebration of my baby, surrounded by people who loved and supported me. I chose a theme of blooming, with wildflowers and vibrant colors. The gifts that started arriving were thoughtful and personal, exactly what a new mother would cherish. The day of baby shower arrived, bright and sunny. The garden center was transformed. My friends, my chosen family, arrived, their faces beaming with genuine joy. Laughter filled the air, the scent of flowers and good food. There were games, yes, but they were silly and fun, designed to bring smiles, not to spotlight any one person's supposed superiority. I felt a warmth spread through me, a feeling of belonging and pure happiness. And then, they arrived. Eleanor, Mark, who had rushed back early, a bewildered expression on his face, and a small contingent of Mark's aunts and cousins. They stood at the entrance, a stark contrast to the vibrant scene within. Eleanor, in her usual impeccable attire, her lips pursed slightly, scanned the room. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, landed on me, then swept over the gathered crowd. The initial confusion on her face morphed into something else, a dawning realization, then a flicker of disbelief, and finally, a slow, cold horror. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked around, as if expecting to see a mistake, a glitch in the matrix of her perfectly controlled world. The other family members with her, the ones she had presumably corralled for intimate family affair, looked equally stunned, their eyes darting between Eleanor and the unfamiliar, yet clearly happy, faces of my friends. The silence that fell over their small group was a palpable thing, a void in the symphony of celebration. I met Eleanor's gaze across the room, offering a small, serene smile. I didn't need to say a word. Her face, usually a mask of cultivated composure, was an open book. The meticulous facade had crumbled, revealing the naked astonishment of someone who had just realized their carefully laid plans had not only failed but had, in fact, backfired spectacularly. The aftermath was swift and predictable. Eleanor's texts began within hours, a frantic barrage of veiled accusations and demands for explanations. "How could you, darling? This is so embarrassing," for Mark, followed by, "Why didn't you tell us you were having shower?" My phone became a constant source of annoyance. Flying monkeys, as my friends wryly called them, emerged from the woodwork. Mark's aunts, confused and manipulated, called me, asking if everything was okay, if I'd had a falling out with Eleanor. I calmly explained, again, the original plan and Eleanor's subsequent suggestion to make it an intimate family affair. I repeated her exact words, emphasizing the subtle exclusion. The narrative, once controlled by Eleanor, was now out of her hands. Mark, bless his heart, was caught in the middle. He eventually confronted his mother, and I heard snippets of their heated phone conversation, his frustration, her indignant denials and attempts to twist the situation back onto me. But this time, Mark saw it too. He saw the manipulation for what it was. Eleanor, accustomed to having her way and controlling every narrative, found herself outmaneuvered. Her social circle, while initially loyal, began to whisper. The story of her trying to exclude her daughter-in-law's friends from her own baby shower, only for that daughter-in-law to throw her own successful event, spread like wildfire through their exclusive circles. The embarrassment she'd tried to inflict on me had, in a deliciously ironic twist, become her own. Her carefully curated image of the benevolent matriarch was tarnished. She was no longer the undisputed queen, she was the woman who tried to ruin her daughter-in-law's happy occasion. The invitations to her bridge club dwindled. The dinner parties became less frequent. Her world, built on appearances and control, began to shrink. I received no further communication from her. The silence from her end was, in its own way, the sweetest validation. I had not sought revenge, not in the traditional sense. I had simply chosen my own path, my own joy, and in doing so, I had stripped away her power. The satisfaction wasn't in her downfall, but in the quiet, unshakable knowledge that I had navigated her toxicity, honored my own needs, and built something beautiful, entirely on my own terms.